A little while ago, upon my request, a company called Kypro Guitars sent me this thing. The X-Metal 7, a badass 7-string guitar that isn't out yet but should be towards the middle of this year. And the reason I asked for it, and it's so special to me, is because this is now my first ever 7-string. You might have seen the dedicated unboxing video that I uploaded for this thing about a week and a half ago, and in that video I said that I'd be going about these types of videos a bit differently in the future, because I never used to do unboxing and first impressions videos for the very simple reason that first impressions don't always hold up, and so it's better for me to spend a week with a guitar and then show it to you. But in retrospect, doing both is a great way for you to see if the first impressions do hold up, or if an instrument ends up disappointing me. And no, this isn't a sponsored video. I asked if I could have this guitar, Kypro said yes. No money changed hands, and in fact, I paid like $80 in customs fees just to actually get it to my house. So, I can and will say whatever the fuck I want. So with that being said, let's dive a little deeper into the X-Metal 7. It's sporting a 26.5-inch scale length, making it the largest guitar I've ever owned. It's got a 3-piece mahogany body, a roast maple neck, which isn't too obvious because it's covered in a beautiful matching satin silver finish to make it extra sleek. It's got a fretboard made of, I'm not sure if it's rosewood or ebony. I'm inclined to say ebony because of how dark the wood is, but it could also just be a very dark rosewood, which has 24 medium nickel frets and some awesome staggered circle inlays, 2 Pluto buckers by YHL Custom Pickups, if I'm not mistaken, a string-through style hipshot hardtail bridge, and 7 in-house locking tuners. And while I think most of you will agree that it looks quite sharp, looks are only about 75% of playing guitar, and so that's why I always spend at least a week hands-on with any guitar before reviewing it. So, I think I love it even more than I did in the unboxing video. Now, that's a big statement, because if you watched that video, you'll know how I reacted to pulling it out of the box. Holy... Oh, there's still a thing on it. Holy mother of fuck! But it didn't just accomplish the bare minimum of not disappointing me for the week that I've been playing it every single day. I learned to love it even more the more I got used to having that extra range at my disposal. I'm by no means the kind of person who moves on to extended range because I've run out of things to do on a 6-string or whatever, which is precisely how I imagined that John Petrucci's 7-string signatures came to be, but for me this was just unexplored territory. And don't get me wrong, I've played my fair share of 7, 8, or even 9 strings in my time, but I've never owned one. I very, very briefly owned a Sub-Zero Generation 8, I believe it was called, but that thing was such garbage that I sent it right back after about 2 days, so I don't count that. But this thing genuinely has opened up a whole new world for me, and I likely would not have touched extended range again for another like 5 or 6 years if this thing hadn't been amazing, but luckily that isn't an issue. The frets are perfect. Got a fresh batch of balloons, baby. I was gonna inhale that and like say, oh, I love the smell of a fresh batch of balloons. That smelled like so many chemicals. Green. This is, Jonald, and I really hope Kypro doesn't end up disappointing us, because that would mean the death of Jonald. Now, I know that these balloon tests don't technically mean all that much, because your conventional guitar will be made out of wood, and wood contracts and expands depending on things like temperature and humidity, meaning that technically, even if the fret ends were filed to perfection, if this was a very dry place and the wood ended up contracting, then the fret ends would still be cutting up my fingers. So really all this proves is that southern Germany is not a very dry environment, but Jonald here is doing perfectly fine, and the Kypro X-Metal 7 has hereby passed the balloon test. The neck has a very fast feeling profile, if that makes sense, but it's not too thin, so it's not as uncomfortably thin as like a Music Man Majesty neck, which is genuinely the thickness of like an iPhone. This beautiful satin silver finish is pretty much flawless. It's not grainy, it's very even and all of that. I love it. The tuning stability, despite some admitted initial doubts about the in-house tuning pegs, very much stood the test of time because I've been able to consistently play it in drop B sharp, my go-to 7-string tuning, for like 3 days at a time without needing to retune it. And it sounds amazing. And I can't wait to hear how amazing it sounds once I actually learn how to dial in a sound for a 7-string, but until that day comes, how about you have some classic 90s Swedish chainsaw tones? So, real quick, let's get to the negatives. Now, there aren't many, but I would still be remiss if I didn't point them out to you. Some neck dive. And to illustrate that for you, I'm going to put on an old shitty strap with little to no grip and just let go of the guitar. I think this might be a test that I'll start implementing into all my future guitar reviews alongside the balloon fret sharpness test. Now, as you were able to see, there is some neck dive, but if you know your woods, you really should be able to just predict this while looking at the specs on the product page, because maple is a much denser and therefore heavier wood than mahogany, meaning that a full baritone-sized maple neck can and will weigh down a regular Strat-sized mahogany body. The dive isn't as dramatic as it is with your average Gibson SG, but it's still worth pointing out to you in this video. Also, weight-wise, the entire instrument clocks in at a comfortable 3.5 kilograms, or roughly 7.5 pounds if you still refuse to use the correct units, which, judging by about 2 minutes worth of internet research about the average weight of a 7-string, seems perfectly normal. Like, I've read about sort of explorer-shaped 7-strings with floored rose bridges weighing around 4 kilograms, which is a little more, but it's also a bit more wood and a heavier tremolo, so, yep, checks out. As for a second negative, honestly, I'm out. So let's talk price. Kaipro is a Japanese company, and they started out making very high-spec handcrafted Japanese guitars, which they still do, but as the company started growing, they also moved to making some production models in China, of which this is one. And the retail price for when this guitar actually hits the market around the middle of this year will be $899 US, or roughly 830 euro, which is awesome. For what you're getting here, for this entire package, which by the way includes a super high quality gig bag as well, $899 is nothing to even raise an eyebrow at. And for anybody who's about to leave a stupid comment about it being made in China, let me inquire, do you really think an American-made guitar built in a factory, and not by hand, is any higher quality than a guitar built in an identical factory just a couple thousand miles to the west? Didn't think so, let's move on. I don't suspect that this is the last 7-string you'll ever buy. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't have the potential to be your only 7-string forever, I don't see why it wouldn't, but it's definitely a guitar that you'll just buy and want to keep forever. I suspect that I will be buying more 7-strings after this, but also, let's be real for a second, next to none of us are looking for the one guitar to replace the rest, we are looking for the next guitar to add to our arsenal, because the former would be a very big ask. And so I think that this is the perfect first 7-string for experienced players, because look at me, I currently own over 20 guitars, and I have owned probably far over 40 or 50 in total, but none of those have been 7-strings. So I am now an experienced guitar player and gear collector, and this is the perfect first 7-string for me, because while I don't imagine it's going to be my last, I also currently can't imagine ever selling it, because it's obviously very bare bones and no bullshit, hardtail, 2 humbuckers, 1 volume, 1 tone, 3-way switch, but that is perfect for me, because as someone with no experience in extended range, that 7th string is the gimmick to me. I don't need or want it to have a tremolo, a kill switch, or any bells and whistles. And if you know me as a guitar player at all, you'll know this is a very rare occasion, I don't actually feel the need to mod this thing. I feel fine just keeping it as the stock factory version of itself, which does not happen very often. But right out of the box, with all the features it just has, it is exactly what I want it to be. And so thus concludes this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to do some gear shopping, you can go to my Thomann or Sweetwater affiliate links in the description. You can't buy this guitar there. You can buy it once it's out through Kaipro's website, which is also linked down there. But you can just do some miscellaneous gear shopping, and it helps the channel out a little bit. If you also want to help the channel out in different ways, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, and I'll see you around.